Forward to the class. Okay, here we are. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming today. Wow, lots of people joining us. I'm so excited to see that the registration numbers, I mean, you guys really outdid yourselves. It must mean that we have such an important topic to talk about today. And it's one that we talk about a lot here at MemoryFox. It's something that we are considering. I mean, I think everybody's talking about AI. There's ongoing conversations all the time about it. So it's really exciting that you're all joining us today. And just in the interest of time, I am going to hop right in. If you registered, anybody that registered for the event will get a copy of the recording. So even if people come late, they'll still be able to see this beginning. But yeah, let's do it. So, okay. I think somebody, looks like maybe somebody else joined using your panelist link, perhaps. We can have them get out of here. But I will go ahead and start by introducing our two panelists here. So first, I'll introduce Chris Miano. He is the founder and CEO of MemoryFox. A little bit about Chris. He spent 8 years in the Army, traveling around the world and learning about the power of storytelling as a tool to connect with people across cultures, generations, and socioeconomic backgrounds. And since then, Chris has made his mission to elevate the stories of real human beings, and he believes that through authentic storytelling, the world can be a more inclusive and equitable place for everyone, which is, I think, something we all really hope for the future of our planet, right? So, Chris, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And of course, I'd like to introduce our next guest. We have Griff. He's the VP of Growth at Momentum. That is and he is a behavioral psychologist by training, where he studied financial decision-making and philanthropy at CU Boulder. He has led successful capital campaigns for 2 international nonprofits and founded a microbrewery in Chile and Patagonia, which is very important to the bio. I'm really glad that we left that in there. He was also the executive editor of Bike Life magazine, and he's the nation's 3rd largest cycling-related print publication by circulation. So, you know, when he is free, you can find him on his bike. So, really excited to have both our panelists here today. Just as a reminder, I'm going to share with you how today's going to work. So, it's sort of broken down into 3 parts. Part 1, Chris, he's going to share a simple 3-step process to collecting community stories, as well as interview questions that will spark great conversations. And he's going to do all that using real-life examples from MemoryFox storytellers. Then Griff is going to discuss all the ways that use AI to share your stories and to make sure that the right person is receiving the right message. That is like the million-dollar key, right? For everyone, making sure the right people get the right message. That's what we all want to do. And then third, I collected your questions during registration. I read through them all. I sorted them, and I have a bunch that I'm ready to ask our panelists. So when they are done, I'm going to come back on and ask as many questions as I can get to before the end of the session. And then we will just wrap up by learning a little bit more about MemoryFox and Momentum. So if you stick around to the end, you can learn exactly how these tools work. So that's all for me for now. I'm going to pass it over to Chris. Take it away.
All right, now the pivotal moment where I try to share my screen. That is always sometimes an adventure. All right, can you see my screen?
That looks pretty great to me.
All right, good. All right, well, let's get into it. Thank you, Carly. So I like to think about video storytelling along this sort of framework. If somebody asks, what is your mission? Like, can you show them, right? Not just data visualizations and spreadsheets and things like that, but actually show your impact, visualizations of your impact in video. And the best way to do that, of course, is storytelling, right? Storytelling is fundamental to who we are as humans, and it's how our brains best receive information, and there's a lot of reasons for that have developed over the years, and we'll kind of go into that. So, but just as a foundational piece, like, can you show them your mission? A little bit of what we're going to be going over. So we're going to talk about how to build a storytelling campaign. some examples and their keys to success. We'll go through some tips that are going to help you start collecting great stories. I know that can sort of be the hard part. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ethics of storytelling and a little bit of AI too, to kind of round it out. And then we'll pass it off to Griff. So why is video storytelling so important? I'm actually a big stats nerd at heart, so I hope you find these numbers interesting and see why it's so impactful. So first, and most importantly, right, you'll raise more funds. Classy, if you guys have heard of it, did a study of fundraising campaigns, and they found that ones that incorporated video received more than double the funding the campaigns that don't, right? And that's obvious. Video gives you a really nice window and elicits a lot of emotional responses that just text and images don't. Second, it's actually like physically more memorable. Viewers retain vastly more information when they see it through video. People telling stories to other people, it's a very primal human function, like we talked about. Long before people could read, and this is how information was transferred for thousands of years, from Virgil to Homer to Gilgamesh. It's the oldest tradition we have as humans. They told stories. They didn't write it down, right? And third, and maybe most importantly, it's what people want nowadays. Short form video, like on Instagram and TikTok, it's really exploded as attention spans have dovetailed. And so we want to tell stories that meet the tastes, but also the technology of our times. Rather than trying to swim upstream and trying to do things differently. We really want to integrate with what exists. And to be honest, a lot of nonprofits have been given an impossible task of standing out in the attention economy against very big corporations that have a lot of money. But authentic grassroots content, they can't replicate that. That is your competitive advantage, is that you have actual impact stories that are real and authentic, right? And so we want to help you leverage those. Rather than trying to compete on their terms in product marketing, we're talking about community building and storytelling, because that's what we do, and that's how we stand out on social media otherwise. So a customer of ours, Kids Health Connections, they collected community generated video for a grant and for some social media outreach that they wanted to do. And it really gave a nice window into their mission. So I want to show you guys a quick example of what storytelling can be, right? It doesn't have to be all these expensive and long-winded things. A lot of times it's just community generated stories about your impact. So let's go ahead and watch this. It's one of my favorite videos.
I love the mentors, and I love that they help me and they motivate me and push me up when I'm feeling down and I stop or I'm say I can't do it. They always say I can't, but I always say I can, but they always say I can do it. Never say you can't. So I love that they motivate me all the time. And we're strong, fit kids.
Right? Like that's amazing. Engaging video that brings you the mission beneficiaries and the content right into the living room of the person you're trying to influence, right? Whether it's a grant maker or an individual donor. And like corporations spend millions of dollars trying to get this content, and you have it going on every single day with the beautiful programs that you do. And so that's what we want to capture, right? Is beautiful community generated stories about your mission in action. And so we know that video is important, and we know what sort of good video can look like, right? So how do we actually get started collecting it? This oftentimes becomes one of the most difficult parts of the process. And so we built a very simple framework to help unblock that process so that you can just get started. It's very, very simple because video should be accessible to everybody, regardless of how busy or where you at and how many people you have on your staff, right? And so it doesn't have to be hard. It's truly accessible to everybody. So let's take a look at it, right? Step one, your output. Start at the end before you even go talk to somebody and start using up their time. We want to talk about, what are we trying to accomplish here? Is it for social media campaign, a donor report, for a grant, for a gala, right? All very different things that are going to shape how you collect and what questions you ask. So what type of content would be best? Like a slideshow, a single video, a snippet for Instagram stories, could be a lot of different things. But start at the end and work your way back. Step two, the output or the inputs. So when you start to think about who to collect from, what type of content will help satisfy the requirements for step one? Do we want testimonials? Do we want maybe video of the mission in action or people on site while the program is happening? Or do we want donors after they donate? It could be a lot of different things that you're collecting community stories about. And so it could even be staff or volunteers, or like I said, even just after someone donates, there could be a trigger. Hey, share your story why you donated. You can really get some beautiful stories that way. And then third, and this is sort of what ties a bow on it and that people forget, what are the questions that we want to ask that will elicit great responses? So great questions lead to great answers, and poor questions, they cause people to lock up, right? And they keep them from sharing their truth. And what we're trying to do is give people a pathway to share their story in a way that's ethical and thoughtful of them, but also accomplishes some sort of business goal to help raise funds. So like I said, to wrap it up, like I said, very simple. What do we want to accomplish? What type of content will help us achieve that? And then what are the call to actions? What's the vehicle that's going to be able to pull in that content? Right. And if you capture those three things or work on those three things, it really is going to go a long way in helping you set the foundation to a beautiful storytelling campaign. And so remember that short video that we shared earlier. So like I said, they actually use this same process. It really does work. Carly's actually going to go ahead and drop a worksheet in the chat so you can do this yourself. And it contains this example. What's beautiful is they collected this content and they submitted it alongside a grant and they got the grant. So really made us obviously very proud to see that hard work, really come to fruition. So in sort of drilling down a little bit and looking at how they did it, right? So you've got your outputs. They first determined that they wanted community generated video to attach their grant application, but also some evergreen content to be able to use on social media and for their website to increase attendance at their programs, which is obviously a very big, important part too, is using it to stand out. So inputs. They determined that the very best videos, as you can imagine, right, would be testimonials from kids and parents enjoying the mission in action, right? Most beautiful time to collect as well while it's happening. And finally, the call to actions. So they were crystal clear. What was the most important thing that you learned? Open-ended, but it has some clear direction to it and gives them, again, a pathway to be able to share their story while also keeping them focused on what you're trying to accomplish. And so here's some other storytelling examples of customers of ours. Arbor Day Foundation, beautiful organization. They're wildly successful collecting content from their hundreds, maybe thousands of tree planting events that go on, programs that happen all across the country. What really helps them is staying organized, right? We find that organizations who truly care for and steward and demonstrate stewardship of stories over time, they actually get higher participation rates over time because people know their stories are going to be taken care of. They also tied the collection campaigns to a specific outcome. That is a huge, huge piece because that storyteller is going to tell us different story based on where that content's going. If it's going on Instagram, they might tell a different story than if it's going for a grant proposal. And so you really want them to know. In this case, they use a lot of corporate sponsors. So that person who submits something knows it's going to be going to a corporate sponsor. So it helps them sort of shape the story that they want to tell, and builds that trust over time. Oop, I don't know what that is. How do I get rid of that? Sorry, guys. I just pressed the button.
I don't know. You set some sort of timer.
Oh, that's great. How do I get rid of that?
Some new feature in Canva, but we haven't discovered yet.
All right. Well, I'm not actually sure how to get rid of that. So we're gonna plow through that. Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, a really neat organization. That what's important to them is they use it to actually perform their mission, and they know their audience very, very well. So they collected stories and questions from students and young people during COVID-19, asking questions and concerns, and they collected those videos, and then they use them with doctors in the community to be able to answer those questions. And they made a really cool composite video, like a question and answer of community generated questions. So I think a really cool way is if you really know your audience, you can collect stories that are really geared towards that audience and being able to influence them. And it was a great success, and it led to a lot of increases in vaccinations, right? Because children asking questions really elicits a certain response out of people that I think is very helpful. Last one, Wreaths Across America, a beautiful organization that do an annual wreath laying ceremony in cemeteries all over the country. And the key to their content collection is multiple touch points. So they were able to collect over 8,000 pieces of content from over 1,000 different contributors all over the country, because they were prompted to submit photos and videos during and after the day of volunteering several times. So it wasn't just like, hey, can you guys upload your videos from the day? It was a sequence of three asks, and they also put it in their newsletters, and they put it in their emails, and every single outreach that they do, they ask for stories. So they really make it part of their organization is to be constantly asking for and telling stories. So having multiple touch points rather than just one, because people are very busy, right? And you can't just ask once, you really have to be persistent. And people don't mind, they love sharing their story. So now that you have a plan, how do you actually start collecting this content? A lot of times this is where people get caught up, is the actual nuts and bolts of the actually collecting content. So one of the ways to do it is to generate a domino effect at your programs or events. So instead of a photo booth or just doing nothing, create a story booth where people can come and they can share stories of in response to prompts that you may have. And what's nice about it is when you do it in person, people will go tell others, oh, what were you doing over there? Maybe a little line develops. And then you create a little domino effect and momentum that gets people to share more stories and a little bit of peer pressure too, right? And especially, you know, if there's wine at the event or it's a particularly fun event, there may be really cool things that you can do to get people to do it as well. People get a little loose when there's wine involved too, so that can be fun. But yeah, really like consider generating a domino effect at your programs and events to get people to share their stories. This is huge. Designating a content collection champion. So at your program events, one of your volunteers could have wear the hat, who's like a particularly, good at this skill, asking people to share their stories. So, right, grabbing the executive director, maybe some board members, some volunteers who've been here for a while. Maybe there's just community members who just like to participate in the events. It could be anything, right? But designate a content collection champion, let them know who's going to be there, maybe give them a checklist, and find someone who loves it, right? It shouldn't feel like a burden. They should love telling stories. And I think they'll love to do that as something additional way to contribute. Third, ask great questions and get great stories. We talked about that. Not everybody is a natural born storyteller based on their personality type or maybe even some traumas that they experienced. And so we want to give them a pathway to be able to share their story. So instead of like the classic, tell us your story, right? How did our organization help you overcome the challenges that you were facing, right? Very specific. Tell us about the volunteer work you do, right? If I ask my 5-year-old, how was school today? He'll be like, oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Well, if I ask him like, how was gym today? Like, how was math class today? Or, whatever, right? Then you get a much more specific. Tell us about your first day of school or your first day volunteering, right? That's a beautiful image because that's like all those feelings come rushing back of that moment. You take them to it. So really ask them those like guided questions. A lot of people ask us, like, what are some great examples of questions? So here's a quick list. Like I said, you're going to get this presentation afterwards, so don't feel the need to like take a snapshot or anything. But I like ones like, how has your life been impacted by our organization? This is really neat. Like who at our organization helped you the most, right? What a beautiful way to reward a volunteer, like through a story that someone told about them, right? I mean, I almost get chills thinking about, right? I thought 8 was really cool too. There are a lot of nonprofits out there, right? What's so special about us? Especially a great question to ask donors, right? Like, why do they choose this org? What's so special about this organization? And you're going to not only have great content to like share with your community about this stuff, but also you're going to learn a lot about your community in a question like that. And so there's so many benefits to storytelling as you can imagine. And this one is maybe most near and dear to my heart, not only because it includes our intrepid marketing director, Carly Euler, but her mantra is they can't say yes if you never ask, right? And that's what made her such a brilliant fundraiser. She used to work at a veteran services organization, and she reached out to an actual Vietnam Medal of Honor recipient. His name was Colonel Barney Barnum. And he actually served as Assistant Secretary of the Navy in 2009. So he's like legit national hero, probably hard to get a hold of. And she fearlessly just reached out to him and asked him to attend an event. And not only did he attend and told a story, he made donations and he opened up some doors to additional funding options as well. So creating that culture of storytelling in your organization by asking for testimonials all the time across multiple channels, never being afraid to ask, never feel like you're bugging people, because people, like, that's what you do, right? We create impact, and then we tell stories about that impact. So like you can conclude your monthly newsletter by asking for replies. A lot of things that we kind of already talked about, but it demonstrates your commitment to storytelling, and people appreciate that. It really does pay dividends. Not only will you get more stories, but you're going to be more connected to your community because you actually you care about that. You're united in your story. This is probably like the #1 question we get. So what do I do if the people I serve have sensitive stories that they might not want to share? Now, we have an entire webinar about this, but I always like to touch upon this too, because I know everybody will have the question. 58% said that they struggle. This is an informal study that we did. I actually bet it's a lot higher. That struggle to collect stories from their community while doing no harm, right? You don't want to be exploitative of people's stories. You want to make sure you're tracking consent. You're giving them an opportunity to withdraw consent if something changes over time. So really thinking about that. So what Carly did is she took a lot of these insights and she asked people all over the industry, from boots on the ground nonprofit professionals to storytelling experts and consultants, strategies about ethical storytelling, consent, privacy, the whole deal. If you haven't read it yet, please do. We're going to create probably a version 2.0 next year that's going to include some more information, so be on the lookout for that. But very proud of Carly in putting that together. I think it's a great asset to the nonprofit community and for everybody. But here's some quick tips, so some quick takeaways. So 5 quick keys. So give your community the microphone, right? We keep talking about community generated content. With today's technology, we don't need to be speaking for others, right? We give them the mic. And that way, because when you're building community, you want to show community members speaking for themselves. The executive director, the marketing director, the board director, like doesn't cut it anymore. That's just a piece of it. You really want to share your entire community. 2, empower your community to share when and where they are comfortable. I think gone are the days where you make someone drive in or take a bus into your office, take a whole day, and they're going to put makeup on them, put a bunch of cameras in front of them, and then get them to very nervously tell their story and possibly cry, right? They need to be able to do that on their home. They need to be able to like do it again and again in practice and things like that where they feel comfortable. We don't need to do that other way anywhere. It's very unethical. Except in very specific circumstances. Like I said, be upfront about how you intend the story. People are more likely to share if they know where it's going. Grant report versus social media. We talked about that. #4, capture stories in real time all year around. Like that might feel hard, but it becomes muscle memory after a while, where you're always collecting stories. If the only time you collect stories is once a year, 2 weeks before your gala, you're putting a lot of pressure on people to tell performative stories rather than collecting natural stories as they occur all year round. Right? We don't want to stress people out and make them feel like they're performing. Right? We want them to feel elevated. We want them to feel good in sharing their story. And finally, and I know this is very common, we're all used to this now, use strength-based messaging. Do not ask a veteran, what did it feel like? How is your post-traumatic stress disorder make you ashamed in front of your family to not be able to support your family and then get them to cry, right? Those days are over. We do not do that anymore. We use strength-based messaging like, how did our organization help you in a way? And how do you now contribute to your community? How does it feel now to be able to, do these things with your family or whatever it is, right? But like that strength-based messaging that really elevates people rather than exploits them. Poverty porn or deficit-based, stories. Like it has a lot of different names, but we all know when we see it. So we're talking about community building, not exploiting and product marketing, which is the old way. So just to kind of tie a bow on this and wrap it up, right? We're talking about AI today. So what do we want to do? So what are some ways that we can tell stories that are ethical using AI, right? We all want to use it, but we want to remain ethical. So one is if you can't tell people, stories about people who have to remain anonymous, tell the story of an object, right? Tell the story through the eyes of a child's teddy bear or Wheels on Meals truck, or Meals on Wheels truck, or a hammer for Habitat for Humanity, right? There's all these like really beautiful stories that you can tell that are sort of abstract through the eyes of an object. And then you could totally use AI to tell the story of an object, right? There's no ethical implications there. So that can be a really beautiful way to use AI to tell stories that are still ethical. Two, right? Composite videos that are made up a bunch, like you slice up a bunch of videos, maybe put some music to it, and what's the best way to do it is when you have a speaker underneath it, with a voiceover. And so you can definitely use AI to help you build that script, right? As long as you're telling the story ethically and things like that. But that's a great way to use AI, is to help you build that, or at least get the ball rolling. I use ChatGPT all the time for brainstorming, right? It's a great way to get started and get the ball moving. So you can use it to help think of storytelling campaigns for your community, or some prompts and things like that. It actually does a pretty good job with that stuff. Number 4, generate images to protect anonymity. Now, this is obviously a very specific circumstance, and you unequivocally have to let your audience know that this is an AI generated image, as you can imagine, right? You don't want to violate that trust. But AI images are fine, right? I would maybe not use an exact likeness. I would try to make the likeness and be thoughtful of ethical considerations about race and like stereotypes and things like that. But like, as long as you kind of negotiate those waters, definitely use images that evoke certain things to us to go alongside a story. But again, let people know that it is an AI generated story. And finally, and maybe most importantly, look for tools in the nonprofit segment that are specific to nonprofits, but leverage AI in an ethical way that can like constrain themselves rather than the for-profit side in helping you fundraise, right? There's so much that you can do, but you can't just use for-profit tools that are exploitative and product-based. What you need is a tool like Momentum that is nonprofit focused, understands the nuances of donor communications, and it can really help you stay on track as you communicate your impact to your donors, and keep your storytelling programs in moving along efficiently. So thank you. I love talking about this stuff. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. But if you guys have any questions, we'll definitely have a Q&A afterwards. But go ahead and scan this if you'd like. We have a 10% back offer. The ethical storytelling report is in there. A lot of great tips and resources that'll help you out as you tell great stories. And we, of course, would love to help you tell those stories. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Griff.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. I love that. I love a lot of that. I think that was it is really nice to hear somebody be so like forward about like maintaining ethics in the storytelling and in the way that you sort of portray yourself out in the world. If anybody is interested, I would encourage everybody to go check out fundraising.ai. That is sort of our organization that I think, Chris, you may be a part of. I actually don't know, but
yes, I was part of helping craft the original document.
Great, yeah. So what we've put out there is sort of like a set of ethical standards. I would say they're an early version on how you can ethically and responsibly adopt AI for both your organization, but also sort of like for any tools or any systems that you may work with for your donors. Cool. Well, so I'm going to just kind of continue rolling right on here. One of the main things, let me just get this ready. Sorry, I should have done this earlier. Can you see my screen? Cool. So when it comes to storytelling, I figure I'll start by telling my own story. My family is from Louisiana, South Louisiana, New Orleans, which is probably the country's foremost storytelling region. They really are known for spinning a great tale. My background, Carly mentioned it on the intro, I did behavioral psychology, and I was actually studying the psychology of donors and what makes people give. One stat that I really, really love, especially when it comes to storytelling, is that a story is worth 100 numbers, so to speak, right? And so if you say to somebody, hey, look, we raised $10,000, right? That $10,000 is basically worth one story, right? And so like if you can, you want to connect it to people, you want to keep your constituents, the people who benefit from you front and center. And that was one of the studies that we actually ran back when I was a researcher, was looking at sort of how storytelling and how really framing your message can matter to donors. So that was that. One of our main things that we've always been really focused on is making sure that fundraisers feel comfortable, right? And that they aren't overly stressed. So we once ran this huge research study where we asked 450 fundraisers around the country sort of what they wake up in the morning the most stressed about, right? This is what my calendar looked like as we were doing this. I would encourage everyone to never have an experience this busy for them. We were definitely going back to back, but the main thing that we heard is that fundraisers didn't get to spend enough time with their donors, right? That's the primary thing that I think every fundraiser in America sort of has as a North Star, is that they want to spend more time with their donors and they want to be able to share the stories, right? I think that in a lot of ways, the reason that many people are attracted to the profession, excuse me, is to try and be able to sort of share in the story and be a part of the narrative. So I have a bunch of things that I can show you today, but I figured I would just show you a couple of items that can help you sort of use AI to really effectively share the story. So the first one that I'm going to show you is actually this new product that we've released that is our Labs feature. And so Carly was really, really great to share this with me earlier. This is a student feature from, I think, Carly, you said this was a customer of MemoryFox's. I think that's right.
Yeah, Horizons National. Yeah, they're really great. They're really exceptional at using strength-based messaging too. So I'm excited to see how that shows in your
Great. So, they wrote up this great feature on a student named Ethan. They have it on their website. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take this link. I'm going to come over to our system and just plunk it in. All I'm doing is copying and pasting the link, right? One of the hardest things when you get to storytelling is knowing sort of who needs what message, right? And so what we're doing is we're using AI to basically read this story and figure out sort of what it's talking about, right? So it's talking about educational programs for children, supporting long-term student development, reducing the opportunity gap, all of these sorts of things. Then what we're going to do is basically have our system go and look in your CRM and try to find which donors should be receiving this story and how to frame the message correctly for that individual, right? One story can have many different ways that you would want to talk about it with any given individual. And so while you do produce sort of the one piece of content, there's obviously a whole frame that you get to have that you put around that, right? And so our system has gone and it's found these donors who it thinks would be sort of the right fit or good people to sort of share this with. And then, what part of what we do is we sort of help make it really easy for you to engage and talk to these donors. And so when you hit that forward button, what it'll do is it'll write the message for you using AI, and it'll include that link to share the story to Ethan, right? And so it's telling this donor, in this case, it's Kimberly Bowman, everything she needs to know. And it's basically queuing you up so that you can send this message to the right donor with the right framing around it and get this out there. One of the most important things when it comes to using a tool like MemoryFox is when you produce stories, right? You need to get eyeballs on them, all right? You can produce the best piece of content, the best story, the best video in the world. And if you don't drive people to look at it, it's really kind of, it's not going to impact your fundraising operation at all. And so that's what we're really trying to be a little bit more focused on. MemoryFox, they're going to be great at helping you develop that story, build that sort of narrative. What we're going to do is make sure that all of your donors get the message, hear from you, know what to say, all of that. It's all really clean for you. We also have a few other tools like this that you can do. So one version of this that you can do is you can start to sort of do some bulk outreach, which can be really nice. So let's just say these are my, we'll just do the Meet Ethan group, right? We're doing that demo. I have a segment of donors here. There's 6 donors in it. It's each one of them. They all have their own sort of thing that they bring. This is integrated with your CRM, so we know everything. We know everything that you know about these donors. We know their giving history. We know what they care about. We know any notes that you've had. All of that is available. And what you can do that's really nice is actually, I'll come in and I'm going to build a template, and you can add a new template, and we're just going to call this the Meet Ethan template. And I'm going to say, where was I here? Please share this story about Ethan and his new success, right? Positive framing. And we'll just put this link in. I'm going to name this Meet Ethan. And then what you can do basically that's really nice is you can start to scale this up and you can do the outreach to many donors at once. Oh, I lost my draft here. Please share this story with Ethan. Always incredibly precarious to try to type live on the webinar. That was a little bold, huh? What you can do though that's really great is you can grab that whole Meet Ethan segment that we did, and we can send that whole Meet Ethan template that I just made. And when you hit draft now, what it's going to do that's really lovely is it will pull out all of those donors who it thinks should receive this. And you can hit draft all of these emails all at once. And it's going to basically start writing an email to each individual donor in this group. And it's going to know everything about each individual person and what it should share with them about Ethan, right? So it knows everything it needs to about this story. But of course, the way that you talk about it with each person is different, right? And so just to show it a little bit, when you come into Allison Maddox's here, you can see it's written, you know, the story here versus Christine Barnes. It'll load a slightly different email, right? It's writing 2 different emails to 2 different people. You know, you can see here it's a little bit more. It's making reference to the testament of the power that an individual like Allison makes, versus here this is more program oriented, right? And so it's picking up all of those things. It's a really, really good tool to be able to sort of know, hey, here's how you can scale your storytelling most effectively, and start to be able to handle some of those things really, really well. My mouse has died here, so I'm going to try and see if I can bring it back. Cool. When it comes to a couple of other things that you can be doing to share stories, one of the most important ways that you can utilize AI is just to make sure that you're always gathering data or information really about your constituents to know what to say to them, right? One of the most important things when it comes to a story is, you know, at any given moment, you could choose sort of, hey, we're going to focus on developing this story about Ethan. But if you don't know that that's resonant with your donors, you're kind of fishing in the dark, so to speak, or shooting in the dark. What's that phrase? Shooting in the dark. And so one of the most important things is that you be able to create sort of like systems and reporting that lets you know, hey, here's the type of story that is most resonant for our audience. Here's what they care about, right? And so for that, it's really, really important that you be constantly, every time that you basically talk to a donor or have any interaction, you're logging what matters to that person, right? And so one of the things that we can help you do is basically we have a tool that lets you log contact reports with the donor. So if you're at an event, you're out collecting stuff and you want to make a note about someone that you want stored that you can come back to, we can text you and say, hey, we heard you met with this person. How did that meeting go? And then we'll send you a link. And when you click the button in this link, it'll take you here and you can just record your voice. It's really, really powerful to be able to record your voice. You can just say, hey, look, I met with Chris. He's interested in this sort of stories. He really cares about the mission in this way. I think it's really impactful for him. We'll then use an AI to basically process that voice note and then fill out the whole thing for you. You can hit log report and it's in your CRM. And then once it's in your CRM, you can go back to it and you can start to cultivate out of that, hey, what are the things that matter to my donors? You can look at it as a report in the CRM. You can see the whole 9 and you can start to imagine, okay, here's what's really mattering most to these folks. Here's what I'm going to develop next when I think about our storytelling and how we can advance it and take it to the next level. So that's just another little way where you can sort of be out there collecting those stories. I loved Chris's point about sort of having somebody that you demarcate as the story collector. That would for sure be me at the event. Yeah, cool. I think that's actually all I had to show today. I guess there's one other thing that I'll mention, which is really nice, which is when you're trying to figure out what story to tell a donor, you can use some research. You can sort of speed up research. This is probably most valuable for prospective donors. This isn't people who you know really well, but when you're trying, maybe you have all of this content that you've used MemoryFox to create. It's all really high quality. It's there for you, but you're trying to figure out, hey, what do I want to say to this person? What you can do is you can use our LinkedIn tool. And I'm just going to pick on myself here and grab my own LinkedIn profile. And I'll plunk this in here. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to have an AI go in and it'll read everything that it knows about this person, right? It'll be everything that it knows about from my LinkedIn, from an RSS feed, from the CRM, all of that data. It's going to pull that together. And then we also can train it basically on everything that your organization does and is all about, right? We can train it on specific stories if that matters to you, where we can come in and give it sort of the Meet Ethan thing. But you can also just have it, write a sort of like overview of anybody that you want. My thing is taking a little longer than I intended it to here. Oh, actually, I know why though. We'll come back here and do it out of here. Can't do it in that screen. His tisk. So it'll research the donor here. What you can do is I always encourage people when you're using AI to give it as much context as you can. And so this is our sort of context window. Frankly, it's a little bit of a cheat, but if you go to ChatGPT, we have our Momentum fundraising assistant. This is a ChatGPT module that we've developed that is specifically trained on all of the top fundraising tools in the world. I'll have Carly send this out as a follow-up. This is totally free. Everybody can access this. It's really, really easy. And you can brainstorm with it. It's a really nice and effective way to sort of build your story. You can say, hey, I want to try and come up with a good story for our organization focused around health and human services in Colorado. I'm based in Colorado, so I'm choosing myself, right? And then what it'll do is it'll actually converse with you and it'll help you do some of this brainstorming work. And it'll ask some questions as follow-ups, right? So here's some stuff it might do. You can emphasize how your work has directly transformed lives. What is a specific success story or individual impact that best represents your mission, right? You might be able to say, well, we have Ethan. We can go back to that and it'll help you build the whole narrative that you need in order to be able to come back to that. And you can basically add that context in. And when you come back here, see, it'll have built the whole summary on the donor. And then it'll know what touch points are really, really most valuable. So it'll be able to say, hey, look, when you're talking to this individual, we know everything about your org. You can reach out to them and talk about these sorts of things. This is what's going to matter to them most. This is what's going to be the most impactful way to connect the stories. Cool. That's really all I had to show you today.
We need to build an integration, man, because I'm thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if you could pull information about the type of stories that community members are telling, and then that can help inform the stories that you're going to want to send them.
Right.
You know, so if someone tells a story about why this organization matters so much, you can use that info to be able to create better outreach to them, more customized and tailored outreach to them.
Yeah,
Really
completely,
cool.
I completely agree with that.
All right, let's get on it.
All right. Well, yeah, you guys can talk about that. I guess probably after this, right? But
that's very
first,
cool.
I would love to ask you some questions that we received during registration, as well as some that we received during the presentation today. I think I'm going to start with one that actually, Griff, you sort of just answered, but maybe we could dig in a little bit more. This question came from Michelle, and also Chris, if you have anything to add to it. But the question really is just how do I know what prompts to give my AI tool? What are some things that I need to make sure I include? You said be specific. Could we brainstorm a few here? What do we think?
Sure. The rule of thumb is that the more you give it, the better the outcome, the better the output it will give you, right? So you really can't give it too much stuff. Don't be afraid to paste huge, ugly text blobs that you would never, ever, ever want to do. So I'm going to just go back to sharing this. I'll sort of start with a fresh one here. And just for ease, let's say we go to Horizons here. And if you wanted to, what you can literally do here, and this is unashamed, I'm just going to copy the whole homepage, right? Just the whole thing. I'm going to start a new conversation with our GPT, and I'm going to say, help me brainstorm some stories that I can tell about our organization.
Ooh, I love this in real time.
And then I'm just going to paste in that whole homepage, right? This whole thing. Huge, ugly text blob. You would never do this to a person, but you can to an AI, right? And then it'll go and it'll read and it'll think and it'll take its time. And it'll basically come back to you. And let's see what it's got here. So it's got a bunch of stuff in here. This, you could even give it multiple pages if you wanted to. You could do the programs on the opportunity gaps, all of this. But it'll come back and it'll start making some recommendations of some stories you can give it. Do not be afraid when you're using ChatGPT or any of the AI tools to give it just like unformatted, unstructured, ugly stuff. It's totally okay. Don't waste any time like cleaning it up. Don't waste any time like formatting it nicely. It doesn't matter. Go ahead and just get it in there and try to work faster. And so you can, it starts giving you this brainstorm. What impact stories from students or host schools stand out most to you? I think I like the story of Ethan. Here it is, right? And then you can basically come in here and we can go back and grab Ethan's story. And you could paste that whole thing in. Oops, sorry, I grabbed the URL and not the story itself. Paste that whole thing in and drop that in here. I need to pay for the plus version of this because I've used it too much today and now it won't let me run it again. But you can do that sort of thing. I think there's really no upper bound. They say that ChatGPT can basically remember up to 100,000 words before it starts forgetting what you've told it. So that's a ton, right? You're not going to be able to paste
Yeah,
that much
that's
in there.
like people. We're like that too.
Right, right. I'm
a lot
lucky if I
less
can
than
get to
100,000. I'm a
really.
lot
Yeah,
less than 100,000.
exactly.
100,000 song lyrics.
These
but not,
days.
Okay.
The,
Well, I
the
think that's
only thing
pretty
I would
good.
add to that is what I like to do is I tend to put some constraints on it. So like in terms of ethical storytelling, maybe wouldn't apply specifically to what Griff was mentioning, but certainly you can add like a little bit that's like, hey, and also remain ethical to, you know, strength-based messaging, or you may need to protect the anonymity. So what are some creative ways to do that for this story? I think just put some constraints on it in terms of ethics sometimes when necessary is the only thing that I would add to it.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, Chris, we'll stick with you. So another question, which I know you get this question a lot, so I'm excited to share it with you. But this individual, they said the most challenging problem we face is the volunteers and the staff's reluctance to appear in photos or videos. How can we overcome this challenge in storytelling? What are some creative ways that you'd suggest that I can bring their story out without using their faces? We talked a little bit about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think there's two parts to this. Is one, the first thing is why do they not want to show their faces, right? There could be two things. One, it could be a very sensitive mission and people just don't want to do it for some sort of protection or embarrassment or something like that. Like that could be part of it. Or two is they just don't feel comfortable. You know, two could be just they just don't want it, especially elderly and you know, people don't always feel great about how they look, you know, and they may not be ready and things like that. So if it's the second one, you know, a lot of that really is you need to really work on building a culture of storytelling and that it shows that you can show good stewardship of stories and make sure you're informing people where the stories are going and what they're going to be used for. I think if you establish that trust relationship and create a lot of pathways to people telling stories and people see each other building momentum, right? Like, I think you can overcome that. However, if it's the first one, there's probably not much you can do to overcome it, except maybe in circumstances where, hey, this is for a grant proposal. Nobody else is going to see it. It's literally just going to the X Foundation, and they may be more likely to share then. But I think we talked about it, right? If people want to remain anonymous, you could of course blur out their faces, which is a way to do it. But consider symbols, right? Like we talked about, teddy bear, you know, physical objects that can be anthropomorphized to tell a story, right? And I think that can be really affecting. Like a teddy bear, right? For a victim of domestic violence, like, oh my gosh, like that would be so affecting, right? Maybe even more so. So you want to evoke the representation of the person through an object, maybe. Or you can have a staff member who is okay telling the story, tell the story like secondhand, right? While keeping that person anonymous. Is you get somebody who doesn't mind being anonymous to tell that story, and it adds like a human element to it. And also adds like how they were affected by it. You can also, like we talked about, using AI to generate an image, totally acceptable as long as you're letting the viewer know that this is an AI generated image. And of course, being thoughtful of, you know, the ethics of not being stereotypical and things like that. You definitely don't want to do anything like that. But yeah, so it sort of depends on why. I think that if it's number two, you can break down those barriers over time and get them to tell their stories once that trust relationship. And number one is you can use other objects, you can use other creative things to be able to tell that story.
Yeah, I think even, yeah, the last part was like you hit the nail on the head, right? Like it's really just thinking creatively about storytelling and not kind of maybe not taking no for an answer, but finding a way around it, right? Like finding something creative that can still represent your mission, because storytelling is so important. So yeah, really trying to find those other people maybe willing to share. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, tell like a hammer, right? Think of a hammer at a Habitat for Humanity event. How many different people held it? How many different things that it built that day? Like I feel like that those are really powerful things and images that still get
Yeah.
a lot of juice.
Yeah, and you can use AI to
And you can
help
use AI
write
to
that
build it.
story
Yeah,
actually, because
no problem with that.
objects are things that it fully understands. That's
Right.
yeah, that's interesting. Okay, over to Griff. This question came from Christine, but a lot of people ask this. This comes from the most beginner of AI, like somebody who's brand new. They have maybe no understanding of how it works. They said, what is the best place to start for someone who is brand new to using AI? What would you say like is the first thing we should do?
I would encourage you to just go to ChatGPT and play around and just like ask it whatever you were going to Google, right? Just try and ask Chat, right? And so if you were planning to go and look for body shops, you know, like a thing I did today on Google was look for car places that are near me because my car is broken. Ask ChatGPT. Just start asking it some of those questions. And you'll start to get a feel for using it and a feel for how it works and all of those sorts of things. We have tons of resources on our site that I encourage you to use. If you want to use it in the fundraising context, I do encourage you to use the one that we've built. It's like I say, it's free, so no cost. But I think the other thing you can do is that I've found is really effective whenever I'm dealing with new technologies is find someone younger and ask them to show you. And just like live with that little bit of humiliation when they look down their nose at you for being too old. If you can find somebody who's around who's maybe a teenager, you can say, hey, what do you use it for? How do you use it, right? Show me how you use it. Can I see some of the conversations you've had with it? I think that can be a really nice way to learn. And it honestly, like, it's fun for me because I do it with like my little nephews. And it's just like a fun thing to do together, right? They can show me some stuff. They think it's cool. And it can be kind of joyful.
I think those are really great points. Yeah, I mean, as the token youngest person on our staff, I am always willing to help people like Chris learn more.
I'm a little bit of a
Whenever I can.
Luddite sometimes, so
I'm just kidding. He actually was the pioneer with AI at our organization. But
yeah.
Okay, let's see. I think, gosh, there's so many great questions. I think I've got one more, and this one was in the Q&A section. So this is from Naya. She asked, I guess this is for Chris. She asked, what are some tips for creating engaging video content when the organization does not meet in person, either very often or maybe at all, or maybe they don't have any public events? Obviously, sometimes like on Zoom, the video can look a little strange and maybe it's not something that you want to conduct an interview on, for example. Any thoughts there on how to collect a story?
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's why we built MemoryFox, if I'm being honest. You can do it manually, though. So we originally built MemoryFox. It was like right before COVID hit. And it was actually a little more like towards events. And then COVID hit. And it was like, okay, well, I guess we're done. This is the end of this. But then people used it to collect stories virtually. So, you don't want to be reliant on people's Zoom cameras, I don't think, to submit content, right? Because it's just not, unless they pay for like a nice one because they do webinars all the time, right? Most of it's just like the bare bones one. However, their phone takes amazing video, the better than any Zoom video camera, right? And so encourage them to take videos and tell stories and talk about, like, a talking head video is still the best performing content on the internet all these years later. And then you can take those and you can turn them into a composite video that shares a community perspective. So if you were to get like 10 employees to wish happy birthday to one of your volunteers or one of your donors, what a beautiful way to tell the story of how you value your donors, right? And then you can make a composite video, send it to them, all done remotely via their phones. So it has that UGC, user-generated content feel to it, which everyone is, that authenticity, right? It really feels authentic when you use your phone. And so, yeah, it's like that. Don't let that be a barrier. Have them send you their stories. I mean, you could have them send them via SMS or email, or have them put them up on a Google Drive. You got to figure out consent and like how to collect that. And there's certain things you have to do that are kind of hard manually, which again is why we built MemoryFox. But certainly you can do it on your own. But get that user-generated content feel, talking heads, thankfulness, telling stories, things like that. But don't feel like it has to be in person.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And we're seeing now more than ever that for-profit companies, the really big for-profit companies, are making commercials that look like they were taken
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
phone,
they
right?
do.
Like they're trying to look like they are community generated content. They're obviously not, but that's
Making
the
our lives
trend, right?
harder, making everybody's lives harder in the nonprofit world to stand out when they do the fake stuff.
Definitely. But it's really great though, because nonprofits naturally have good stories to tell.
Oh,
So
yeah, the better
um,
stories, yeah.
I guess with that in mind, I think I'm going to transition back over to you, Chris. Are you ready to share just some info about MemoryFox specifically?
Yeah, great. Hey, thank you, everybody. We love talking about this stuff. And if you want to hang out, I'll give you a quick little show of how MemoryFox works in case you're interested. Um, I've got an awesome team and we've been working really hard on it over the years, and there's a lot more to come and we love feedback. Yeah, let me give you a quick little show of how MemoryFox. Can you see nope, sorry, did that wrong. Share, new share.
I do it all the time. I
Okay,
sometimes
can
I
you
share
guys
a
see it
tab,
now?
sometimes I share a screen. I'm not sure. Either way, I'm seeing impact numbers are powerful.
Why am I doing this wrong? Community demo. All right. So, look, I mean, how many are used to this, right? You're talking about impact, you're sharing statistics, 98%, 98%, great numbers, right? But that only tells part of the story, right? Why is Canva being really weird to me right now? Sorry about that. Um, where the heck was I? Man,
I think
there we go. Okay.
if you
But think
put
about
present,
this, right? Now think about if you supplement those impact numbers with the actual visualizations behind it, right? So telling the beautiful story of the children who actually said yes to this, right? That's a whole, it activates a whole different piece of your brain in terms of, how you convey your impact. And so you need statistics, right? Because people crave that. You know how you like the different parts of the brain, like the right side of the brain, that's the one that likes statistics, and the left side, I believe, is the one that likes the stories, right? And so the way we built MemoryFox, right? So we have this awesome collection tool that's super easy to use, super accessible for every single person that you could possibly be collecting from, almost everybody. And they just follow the, simply make this big, sorry. You send it out via a link or a QR code, or you can send it out SMS or via email, and you could send it out to your storytellers, and they very simply just follow the process. You can put in the call to actions, you can collect consent, and it tracks consent through the course of the whole life of that piece of content, right? They record a quick video, picture, or they can do text if video and picture is just not something that they feel comfortable doing, or they can upload directly from their phone, right? So you're collecting all this community generated content from all these different people, regardless of their technical expertise. And then we aggregate all that content on the cloud in a content management system, a digital asset management platform that organizes it by who sent it, when they sent it, does it have internal approval for use or not, where it's been used. You can put in notes. You can track all kinds of sorts of information. One thing that's really cool is we have the ability for people to withdraw consent. So if their situation changes, they're the victim of domestic violence and their spouse gets out of jail, right? You don't want that content living on the website anymore. And so it adds like a temporal element to the content. Really cool ways of keeping all that content organized in a way that you'll be able to leverage it in all your storytelling needs. And then the last part of it is to be able to design it and then get it into your fundraising flows. So we have an integration with Canva, which is really cool. So you could drag all your content into Canva, really make it look really nice using all those free tools that they have. We have a composite video builder where you can take your videos and then you can make a composite video. And then be able to share that. And then, of course, you can download it and use whatever tools that you like to use. And then the next piece is just getting it out into social media, getting it out into your fundraising platforms, emailing it out to your donors via a platform like Momentum. But yeah, it's sort of an end-to-end solution. And just real quick, I want to show you some examples. Oh shoot, sorry, I forgot I'm using a different presentation. Here's an example of one of our customers. You can use our story builder. So you can take your videos and images, and I don't know if you guys ever heard of Humans of New York. That was sort of the idea behind this. is you can take your content and you can build a really nice kind of humans in New York page, except pictures and videos of your community, which is really, really beautiful and powerful to send out. Or you can make some really cool Instagram content.
Thank you, caregivers, for all the wonderful and hard work you do.
Right. So you can make really cool videos out of it and stuff like that. So definitely, we are your storytelling partner. We think of it like a membership almost. So we are very embedded in your process. We invest very heavily in customer success. And like, we know that it's hard, right? And this is a new thing for a lot of organizations, is being able to really leverage video at scale. And so we love to help, and we would love to hop on a call with you and show you how it works in a little more detail and customize that to your organization. So anytime, feel free to reach out, even if you just want to talk shop. Love storytelling, and we're honored to help any way we can.
Thank you for sharing that. Griff, anything else you'd like to share about Momentum before we leave today?
Happily, yeah. So a couple of things that I feel like I can show you in our system. I'll start by showing you a couple of slides that help contextualize it. Let me share my screen. Can y'all see this? Cool. So what we do is we basically integrate all of your systems, and I only have a few of them on the screen here, but if you use MemoryFox, we can also help you connect that, as well as anything else. We start with your CRM, your email, as well as any wealth screening that you do. And then we basically build 3 models that help you fundraise most efficiently every day. The first thing that we do is we make sure that you know who the highest priority person to get in touch with any given day is. I have my little thumbs up thing here. That's funny. So you always can start every day knowing exactly who the highest priority donors or prospects or constituents, volunteers, what have you, that you need to be talking to are. The second is when to get in touch with those people. So we help you build a donor plan, and we help you stick to it. The donor plan is really well integrated, and you're able to sort of see it all in one place. It's all really clean. It can make recommendations about sort of like, hey, you should follow up with this person about something they mentioned. It can say, hey, it's this donor's birthday, or of course you can just schedule your own and do them that way. And lastly, we help you with the what to say part. This is the AI. It will basically write across your screen. We make sure that every draft is written in your tone of voice, so it writes in your style. It also can know how the donor likes to be communicated with, as well as it learns and improves as it goes. So it's always getting better and better. All of that comes together in our inbox. When it comes to sort of sharing stories with donors, it's really the best way to be engaged with them. We put an email in your inbox in the morning to make sure that you know exactly who you need to be reaching out to. And we're reaching out to you to say, hey, look, here's the person to talk to. If you do nothing else today, I know it's going to be busy. Just talk to Mariah Miller here today, right? And we include a little bit of information, that first draft for you. And then when you come into our inbox, you have everything that I was showing you earlier. We have tons and tons of tools in here. You have the donor plans. You have all sorts of stuff that you can use to engage with folks all here. Mobile contact reports, the labs features, all of that. That's all what we're about. I'll have Carly follow up with our GPT that we've developed as well. That's free to use. Yeah, and I think that's sort of the brief overview on us.
Dude, Griff, amazing work. It's been awesome watching you guys like put this all together from like its early stages to where it is now.
It used to be really bad, and now it's actually when it turns
you should
out
have
when
seen
you
MemoryFox 1.0. Oh boy.
Yeah, it turns out when you start, you have to start from zero, and it's hard. And we've been doing this now for, I think, Chris, we've gotten to know each other kind of over the last 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really fun and enjoyable.
Amazing. Great work.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you that stuck around, thanks so much for chatting with us today. You'll all get a copy of the recording. You'll get all the resources we talked about. That'll be coming in an email from me, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you all so much. In terms of MemoryFox, we have an event coming up in December. It's going to be a panel about youth and family stories and how to tell those ethically. So I'll drop that link in the chat right now if anybody would like to join us for that. But other than that, thank you for coming, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Ciao.